What's up guys, and welcome back to Piney Grove. In today's video we're going to be putting up a metal building around our pump house, or at least the pad that we have poured around our well and our pressure tank, and it's going to be built in the same way that this Carolina carport shed behind me is built. So let's go over to the pump house. The guys are over there already putting the building together. Let's capture that and watch that progress. So the process is pretty simple. We have a pre-poured concrete pad that's 8x8, and along the bottom they put these rails right here, this framing around the bottom that has these little vertical studs on it. Well, the first thing they had to do is they had to cut off all the J-bolts that were on the concrete pad, because we were originally going to build this with 2x4 stick framing. But we decided to go metal building, and we'll get into that more as we go through the video. But the first thing they got to do is get this rail attached to the concrete, and they do that by drilling holes through the rail and into the concrete and putting in these concrete anchors. So that's the concrete anchor. And just like an erector set, the actual 2.5 by 2.5 framing is held together with these little metal brackets that are put in with 4 self-tapping screws. So these are the pre-drilled holes that'll get the concrete anchor. You'll notice that they're inset some from the concrete so it doesn't crack the concrete when it goes in. So once he gets that hole drilled, he'll put in that concrete anchor and beat that in with a hammer, and then he just tightens it down with a wrench. Then it has a tapered head so that the hammer doesn't actually mess up the threads on the head. So that's what holds that metal rail down to the concrete. The mega shed behind me was rated at 170 or 190 miles per hour. And that's essential because up here in North Florida, we have pretty bad storms. We have tropical storms, hurricanes, and sometimes tornadoes. So that anchor is a crucial link in keeping this building together. Now he's just going around and using an impact wrench and making sure that all of those anchors are tight. This vertical, 8-foot vertical that goes up to the gable, slides over top of this stud post here. It just goes on top, and then it slides down. And then the way you get it level is you can lift up on that. And in just a couple minutes, you have 2/3 of the structure up for this build. You can see he's pre-cut the metal for the gable end. And he'll put that right up there. And then that's basically the vertical structure and the roof outline or framing for the whole building. We went with a clay color. So you see that clay color right there. And then we went with a white roof. And that's going to match the mega shed here. And that's something that these buildings are very versatile with. You can pick the color of the roof and the color of the siding and the color of the trim. I said I'd get into a little bit of why we went with the metal building, and there's 2 reasons. One is so that it matches our other building, but number 2 is we had this priced to match the house. What I mean by that is, you saw the J-bolts in the concrete. We were actually going to have this stick built with hardy siding, just like the house, and we were going to provide the siding, about $1,500 worth of siding. And to get that stick built with 1 door and 1 window, hold on to your seats here, folks, $6,000 to build that as a stick-built building. And that just didn't make sense to us. We want to protect this well. We want to protect this, this pressure tank here, because it does occasionally get cold enough here in Florida that you do have to protect your pipes. So we wanted to protect it, but not at the cost of $6,000. And we called up Carolina Carports, who build our mega shed, and they don't build this size of building. It's kind of an odd size for them. They do like 10 by 20 is like the smallest carport that they do. So it would have to be a specialty build, and they quoted me $4,500 to build this. And that still seemed a bit too steep. We thought about, well, maybe we'll build it ourselves, but we just have so many projects going on out here at Piney Grove and so little time before we actually build our house that we decided to shop around and see what we could find. And I found Sergio here. He uses the same exact manufacturer as Carolina Carports, the same exact structure. It's all galvanized steel and welded, prefabbed, and he does it for a lot less. So we're getting this building done completely for, I'll let you know at the end of the video, but it's definitely a lot less than $6,000. All right, so what he's doing now is he's establishing a reference point at 4 feet. And what he wants to make sure is that all of these posts are level, or at least the top of the post. So he may have to raise 1 or 2 of them, right? You have a reference point in, let's say, a corner. And like we showed you earlier, these vertical studs slide over top of a smaller diameter square tubing. So this can raise up and down. Once he gets it level where he wants it, then he'll put screws in here and that'll hold it in case this has to come up. So in case I didn't explain that well, let's go over to the mega shed and show you what I mean about being able to move that up and down inside of that stud. So because the porch of the mega shed is sloped for water drainage, you can see right here what I'm talking about. You can see that this is up a little, whereas over there in the pump house, that's all the way down. This is up a little, and it's held up with these screws. So that's an example of what we're doing here. He's raising that to achieve his levelness, and once it's raised, he'll put screws in it to hold it. And those screws are self-tapping, so he just puts them in that nut driver, and they'll drive right through both those posts, and then it's all set. It's really a simple process, and it's really quick. They're putting some diagonal bracing on here to hold it square while they put on the tin, and that'll come off after the building is done. So to give this building support, you have these diagonals here. Now you're not going to have them on the end, and since it's such a short building, you're only going to have them there and there. And coming in the mega shed, it's the exact same way, but you'll see that, you know, there's more vertical studs, of course. There'll be a lot more content coming up on this metal building and how we finish it out. And if you don't want to miss that, please consider subscribing, and also click that like button if you're liking the video so far. I got to get me one of them. If Deb and I were building this building, we'd be using a hacksaw or a sawzall. So when we had the slab poured, we actually had 3.5 inches from the edge of the slab inward, and then we probably inset our pipes another inch or so. But this rail is only 2.5 inches wide. So we got plenty of room here to run any more piping, which we'll have to do as we get this water out to different locations across the farm. You can see he's putting in the 90-degree brackets. And that same process will be used for the windows and the door framing. And again, it's exactly the same way that our mega shed was built. Any place that a horizontal piece of metal meets a vertical piece of metal, you put brackets on it and use those self-tapping screws. So down this side, you can see the concrete wasn't poured correctly and it actually bows out. But he can chip that. Otherwise, the metal, the sheet metal will go against here, and then when water hits here, it might have a tendency to go back into the building. So that shows how important that concrete has to be, right? It's the foundation of a building, and when it's off a little bit, then it causes issues later on when you try to put something, a square building, on top of a unsquare piece of concrete. You can see in the background they're putting on the first piece of metal, and it's horizontal, and that's the cheaper way to put these steel buildings together. You can put them horizontal like we're doing here, or you can do them vertical. Now vertical is a little bit more expensive because then you have to put more railings on the walls in order to screw in the vertical panels. So the cheapest way to go horizontal, and for us out here at Piney Grove, it matches all our other buildings. So you can see if this metal was on this side and they put it vertical, there'd be nothing to screw it to right here. So you'd have to have either more vertical studs or you'd have to have horizontal studs in order to screw the metal to. He knew the dimensions of this, so he went ahead and pre-cut everything, so everything's going to go up really quick. One thing that I like that they did is they strung a string or a chalk line from top to bottom so that all of the screws are in a line. And also an option you can get when you're getting these buildings built is you can get color match screws. So instead of the Galvalume screws across your building, we have clay screws that are going to be on our siding and then white screws on our top. So the screws will just kind of blend in with the siding. Just makes for a much cleaner look, and we did that also on our mega shed and our pole barn. One thing I was worried about with enclosing this was would I be able to get to all the piping and plumbing that I have to do in here, but it's just really a spacious space, and we're going to have a window and a door with a window, so we're going to have a little bit of natural light, and then also we already have electricity in here for a separate circuit so that we can run electrical for a light in here and also a little heater if needed to keep the pipes warm in the winter. So he's knocking off that little lip of concrete there so water will flow properly away from the building, but that's something he didn't plan on doing, but I appreciate him doing it. He's going up the ladder with the first piece of metal for the roof, and it's going to be a horizontal roof and not a vertical one. I thought we were doing a vertical roof, but that was just a little misunderstanding between me and them, and it's not a big deal. He said he would come back and do a vertical roof, but I'd rather just get this building done, paid for, and get it behind us. So what you see there going on is the boxed eave, and what that does is that covers those metal, I guess, rafters that are coming up, and that way you have a clean white line of your trim hitting the white line of the roof. So this is what that's covering up the ends of these rafters. Now to show the difference of how you trim out a vertical roof, so you got the vertical metal there, and then you have the box underneath. So it's just two different ways that you can have your building built. So those are options when you have metal buildings. You can pick vertical or horizontal. Okay, if you've hung in here this long, we'll go ahead and let you know this building cost us $3,000 to build. That's 50% of what it would have cost to have it stick built, and there's no maintenance here. This is literally a lifetime building. You got this galvanized and painted metal siding and metal roof. In my opinion, it's a better building. It's built quicker. I think it'll last longer, and it's definitely going to be less maintenance in the long run. Now they're installing what's called the boxed edge. So this edge goes up against the sheet metal and gives you that sort of look on the end of your building. So that's what it looks like when it's done. I'll go up top and show you how that's terminated on the actual roofing. You have the wall here, and you have a little bit of metal sticking out here. I guess it's 6 or 8 inches. From the top side, you see the horizontal roofing goes to this trim, and creates a box. So the water will flow into here and then down. This should be a good shot of a horizontal roof versus a vertical roof on the mega shed. These guys are doing really good work, and they're also cleaning up after themselves. Not every contractor does that, so good job there, Sergio. So they put in the horizontal and they get it level, and he'll measure up and put in the second horizontal, and that's where the window will go. As I'm filming the progress of this building, a carpenter bee just circled and buzzed around me, and it reminded me of another good reason why a metal building is better than a stick built. Carpenter bees can't bore holes into this steel, and therefore they can't destroy this metal building. So we have a lot of carpenter bees up here in North Florida, and they do a lot of damage. So after the bottom is set in, they put the window in to make sure they get the top horizontal metal exactly right. And then they'll put that in with those L brackets, horizontal, horizontal, vertical, and then the window will get screwed into that. With the window framed out, they can now put on the metal on the side of the building. Once the metal's on the side of the building, then they'll cut out the hole for the window and then put the trim around that. All right, we're ready to put the window in. I'm not gonna lie, if I was gonna do it all over again, I would only have done 7-foot tall walls on this instead of 8 foot, and that way it wouldn't look so much like a tower. If it had shorter walls, it'd look more like a building or a pump house, which it is. Come around this side, you can get a peek of how the door is, and you can get those doors either with no window, like in the mega shed, or with a window. We elected to have a window to get a little bit more light in there. The door will get the same framing as the window. We'll put a vertical on this side, and then we'll put a horizontal across the top. We'll screw the door into that, and that's how the door will get mounted. Getting real close to having it completely boxed in. Then we'll have to do the edges. We'll have to do the trim around the windows, the J-channel. We'll have to do the trim on the corners, and then I think we'll be done. So what the guys are doing now is they're working on the J-channel around the window and the door. And that's a critical part of putting these metal buildings together. If you don't get that J-channel correct, these windows will leak. And in both our mega shed and our red pole barn back there in the background, all the windows in those buildings have leaked, and I've been battling that, trying to find out where they leak and put silicone. But if you do the J-channel correctly and overlap it correctly, your windows won't leak from the beginning, or at least there's a minimum amount of silicone that you'll have to put in the corners. So it looks like these guys are really trying to take the effort to do it right. Sergio told me, it's not gonna leak, Brad. He said, I will stay here and check and make sure it doesn't leak. I don't know if he's gonna stay here till it rains or not. Sergio's taking the chisel there and knocking off the edge of the concrete under the door. And I said, I don't need anything under the door, it's fine as it is. And he said, no, I'm gonna put a piece of trim underneath there. I wanna make sure it looks nice. He's going that extra mile, that extra effort, and that's just not something you see a lot. So I'm just really pleased that I was able to connect with him. If you guys are looking for a building, a steel building in the North Florida, South Georgia area, be sure to look him up. He's doing a really, really good job for us out here at Piney Grove. All right, we're putting the finishing touches on here. We're putting the corner molding or corner trim. Covers up all those cut metal ends. Sergio is doing the final touches here. A bead of silicone so my windows won't leak. We'll take a quick peek inside. You can see there's plenty of room to maneuver in here. Hopefully you can see above me and behind me, there's just lots of room where maybe I can put a little loft or something in here for storage. 6 hours from the time he started till the time he finished. 2 men, 8x8, metal building, horizontal siding, horizontal roof, 1 window, 1 door on an 8x8 concrete pad. Vertically, the walls are 8 foot tall. That'll do it for today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please click that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. But until the next one, y'all take care out there, and remember, life's short, tractor hard.